Hello, and welcome to English Mastery Podcast, the show that helps you become more confident and fluent in English. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest challenges English learners face, thinking in English instead of translating from their native language. If you've ever struggled to respond quickly or felt stuck searching for the right words, this episode is for you.
Oh, I'm really excited about today's topic, Megan. This is something that every language learner goes through, and it's such a game changer when you finally break free from the translation habit. We'll be sharing some really practical strategies that our listeners can start using right away to think more naturally in English.
That's right. We'll look at why thinking in English is so important, and then break down some step-by-step techniques that actually work.
And the best part is, we'll even do some fun exercises together. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll have a whole new approach to processing English in your mind. Are you ready to dive in? Let me start by explaining why thinking in your native language first can really hold you back. You see, when you translate everything in your head, it's like running your thoughts through two different processors. It takes extra time, creates delays in your responses, and honestly, it's mentally exhausting.
But isn't it natural to translate when learning a new language? I mean, that's how most of us start, right?
Absolutely, Megan, and it's a great question. Yes, translation is a natural starting point, but here's the thing, it becomes a habit that's hard to break. Think about when you're having a conversation. If you need to translate every word back and forth, you're always going to be a few seconds behind. It's like watching a movie with delayed subtitles. Everything feels off sync.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. I can definitely see how that would affect fluency.
Exactly. And there's another big problem with translation. Languages don't always match up perfectly. Some expressions and concepts just don't translate well. For example, how would you translate "it's raining cats and dogs" literally into another language? It probably wouldn't make any sense.
So, how do native speakers process language differently?
Well, when native speakers communicate, they're directly connecting concepts with English words. They don't think about grammar rules or word order consciously. It just flows naturally. When I see a dog, I don't think perro or chen first and then translate to dog. I just think dog immediately.
That's fascinating. And I guess that's why native speakers can respond so quickly in conversations?
Exactly. When you think directly in English, you're not just speaking faster, you're actually understanding faster too. Your brain processes the information once, not twice. It's like having a direct highway to meaning instead of taking a detour through another language.
So it's really about creating those direct connections in our brains between concepts and English words?
That's right. And the good news is our brains are incredibly adaptable. With the right practice and techniques, anyone can develop this ability to think directly in English. It's not about being perfect. It's about gradually training your brain to work more efficiently with the language. Now, let me share 5 powerful strategies that will help you develop the ability to think directly in English. The first one is super simple. Start with basic objects around you. Just look around your room and name things in English. Don't translate. Just see and say.
Oh, that sounds manageable. So you mean like looking at my desk and thinking computer, coffee mug, notebook?
Exactly. And once you're comfortable with that, move on to the second strategy, describing what you see. Instead of just naming objects, form complete sentences in your head, like "my coffee is getting cold" or "the sun is shining through my window."
I actually tried something similar when I was learning Spanish, but I found myself getting stuck a lot. How do you deal with that?
That brings me to our third strategy, talking to yourself in English. That inner monologue we all have? Try to make it English. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes because no one's listening. You can practice while looking in the mirror, doing chores, or even taking a shower.
I have to admit, I feel a bit silly talking to myself in the mirror.
Trust me, it works wonders. Now, the fourth strategy is really powerful, using pictures instead of translations. When you hear or read an English word, try to visualize the actual thing or concept rather than thinking of the word in your native language.
Could you give us an example of how that works in practice?
Sure. Let's say you hear the word excited. Instead of translating it, think of the feeling. Maybe picture someone jumping up and down with joy. It's about creating direct connections between English words, and real-life concepts.
That makes so much sense. But what about more abstract words or complex ideas?
That's where our fifth strategy comes in, active listening. The more English you absorb, the more natural it becomes. Listen to podcasts like this one, watch English movies, YouTube videos. But here's the key, try to understand without translating. Let your brain process the English directly.
I've noticed that sometimes I catch myself understanding English content without realizing I'm listening to a foreign language. Is that what we're aiming for?
Absolutely. That's the sweet spot, when English starts feeling natural rather than foreign. Remember, this isn't something that happens overnight. You need to practice these strategies consistently.
What about when we get stuck? Sometimes I freeze up when I can't think of the right word.
Great question. When that happens, try to explain the concept using other English words you know. For example, if you can't remember the word umbrella, you might think the thing we use when it rains to stay dry. This keeps you thinking in English rather than reverting to translation.
Now that we understand the strategies, let's put them into practice with a fun exercise. Are you ready to join us, everyone?
Yes, let's do this together. We'll guide you through 3 simple steps that you can practice anywhere, anytime.
For step 1, let's all look around us right now. Wherever you are, at home, on the bus, or taking a walk, find 3 objects and name them in English. I'll start with what I see: microphone, coffee cup, and window.
Perfect. Now for step 2, let's take one of those objects and create a simple sentence about it. Don't overthink it. Just describe what you see or what you're doing with it.
I'll try. My coffee cup is half empty and it's still steaming.
Excellent. And now for our final step, we're going to imagine a common scenario: ordering coffee. Let's walk through this together. Picture yourself walking into a coffee shop. What's the first thing you'd say?
Hi, I'd like a large latte, please.
Great. And then the barista might ask you,
Would you like that hot or iced?
hot, please. And could I get an extra shot of espresso?
See how we're thinking directly in English? No translation needed. Just visualize the scene and let the words flow naturally.
Take a moment now to play out this coffee shop conversation in your head. Remember, don't translate. Just think and respond as if you were really there.
And don't worry if you make mistakes or need to pause. The goal is to practice thinking in English, not to be perfect. Wow, we've covered so much ground today about thinking in English. Remember, everyone, fluency isn't about knowing every single word in the dictionary. It's about training your brain to think in English naturally.
Absolutely. And please don't stress about getting everything perfect right away. Your brain is like a muscle. The more you practice these techniques, the stronger your English thinking will become.
The key is to start small. Name those objects around you, have those little conversations with yourself, and gradually build up your confidence.
And why not start right now? After this episode, try describing your next activity in English, even if it's just making dinner or sending an email.
We'd love to hear how these strategies work for you. Until next time, keep practicing, keep thinking in English, and join us again for another episode of English Mastery Podcast.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember, every small step counts. See you next week.
Bye for now.